Most team events are average at best. Here, we're going to talk about the top 10 do's and don'ts for successful team offsites. If you've ever planned one, you do not need me telling you that it can be a heck of a lot of work and a couple of late nights. As leaders, we know that at least a couple of times a year, we need to get our team together and do something fun. But here's the thing, most offsites are a huge missed opportunity. The average participant rates team events just 6 out of 10. Whilst we might have experienced some shockers, most are fairly alright. But most leaders, I reckon, are missing out on a bigger opportunity. They're focusing on things that are fun, like treasure hunts, axe throwing, bowling, even drinks, without realising actually there's so much more they could be utilising and squeezing from that opportunity. From interviewing hundreds of leaders about the good, bad and ugly of their offsites, I realised that most leaders fall into one of 10 super common pitfalls with their team events. In this episode, we're going to share what these are and what you should focus on instead to make your team events more than just fun and memorable, but something that actually drives results and feels oh so worth it for all of that time and effort you put into planning the damn thing. See, it's my belief that wielded wisely, an offsite is the most effective tool in a leader's arsenal. Nothing can transform a team so fast. Nothing else can help fast track trust or help a team start rowing in the same direction as each other than coming together in person, ideally. The truth is that no one taught us as leaders how to create really effective team events. And so we're making some really simple mistakes that are actually costing us. So to help, we boiled it all down into a cheeky cheat sheet. You're going to find the link to download that below the video. But right now we're going to dive into each of the 10 in turn. And I would suggest stick around for number 10 because that's really where the fortune lies. Okay, let's dive in. Here are the top 10 tips for planning successful team events and the common pitfalls to avoid. So pitfall number 1 is an absence of purpose. Now, I'm not going to lie, we're starting with the pitfall that most leaders think that they actually have nailed. When I speak to other facilitators, other event experts, this one, though, despite what leaders think, is the one where they say is the biggest gap. So tip 1 is to get super clear from the off, to set a clear purpose. What specific outcome are you looking for in this particular event? What do you want to be different after you have gathered your team together? Once you become clear on this, let that be the lens which you make all your decisions through. As Simon Sinek says, start with why. Now I'm going to dive much deeper into all of this in a future video because it sounds simple, but it's actually a really hard thing to do, to decide what's the one thing I want to achieve from this particular group of people coming together at this particular time. But if you want your event to be a success, not just average, you have to get clear on that first. An effective offsite is not just a random set of things cobbled together, nor is it time to fill. So even when you think you already do this, you already think you set a purpose for your event, maybe think about how you can get even clearer, even more specific for your next event. Pitfall 2 is the last minute scramble. How familiar does this sound? You put the date in the diary, you lock the venue in, and then you leave a little bit. The invite's gone out to the team, but then the date ends up creeping up on you and you're like, oh gosh, it's around the corner. Despite our best intentions, it's so often just a last minute rush to pull everything together. And frankly, by the time it's all happening, you're just exhausted, glad it's over. So tip 2 is simple. Plan ahead. I know you're busy, but planning something actually of real value takes a little bit of forward thinking. To avoid that last minute scramble, your team, I promise you, are going to thank you for it. Well, actually, they're not going to thank you for it, but it's definitely worth it. Okay, pitfall number 3 is too much mandatory fun. Okay, this is a real biggie. What's fun to me might not be fun to you, right? I love yoga, but you also might love yoga too. But unless the whole team are yogis, forcing your team to do a downward dog is going to be someone's idea of a nightmare. Again, you didn't need me to tell you that. Not forcing your team to do yoga is an obvious one, but more common ones are drinks or outdoor stuff or physically demanding activities. Hey, an inflatable assault course or raft building or some sort of competitive sports day, they all sound great to me, but they might be someone else's idea of hell. Often as leaders, we want to do something fun when we get our team together. We want our team to be energized and leave thinking, yeah, that was a great day, that was super memorable. But often in doing so, they fall into pitfall 4. Now, that's coming up, but before I share that, what I want you to think about is, instead of jamming your event with military fun, try and balancing fun with strategy. You know what, we all want to feel like our work has meaning, that we're part of something, that we're making a difference. Well, it's easy to put work in one bucket and fun in another, but from my experience, participants actually find interactive strategy or an innovation session often a lot more fun than actually being forced into doing a treasure hunt that feels totally unrelated to their work. Not always, but it's food for thought. Which brings me onto pitfall 4, unconscious exclusion. Now, it's obvious to see how more physical activities like cocktail making or even drinks might be unintentionally exclusionary. But I've seen some absolute shockers. Recovering addicts who have been forced into a cocktail making class, teammates who absolutely hate sports, forced to sit and watch the rest of the team for an entire mandatory sports tournament fun thing. I mean, talk about counting down the hours until we go home, right? Less obviously, unconscious exclusion can also happen when we fail to involve the team in the actual events themselves. You start deploying a strategy to the team and then just expecting for them to adopt it without inviting any input. You might have put on some training, or you invited so-and-so from so-and-so department to come and speak, and it's not uncommon that as a participant we're just sitting like a passenger all day through someone talking at us. So instead, how can you actually involve the team in building a strategy? How can you engage them throughout? So tip 4 is the opposite of unconscious exclusion, conscious inclusion. The aim is to include everyone. It's not always possible, but even when it's not, at least be conscious of that. The majority enjoy a drink, the minority probably won't. Well, therefore don't make your whole thing around drinks. And if you are putting drinks on, make sure that there's at least some options. But more than that, it's not only about that, making sure that there's alcohol-free options, etc. It's actually about how you create experiences that allow everyone to feel included, to interact. So pitfall 5, we've actually already touched on. That's when we're just talked at. See, a popular format for a team event is a mix of work, usually in the morning, and play, usually in the afternoon. It's great in principle, but in practice, this black and white can actually be quite dry. The thing is though, the best learning is actually when we feel involved. That's why it's really important to encourage interaction, discussion, group activities. So the tip is, how can you prioritise participation at your events? The research is super clear that the more involved we feel, the more motivated we are to make whatever it is happen, to drive results. Even simply by having an opportunity to have our voice heard, to massively disagree, it actually increases our commitment, even if we remain unconvinced. So do you create enough space in your agenda for voices to be heard, for everyone to contribute? Because most of us don't. Now, I'll admit that this pitfall is one that, despite knowing a little bit of myself, I regularly will fall into, is jam-packing our agendas. Often we overestimate what we can actually achieve in a set amount of time. We stuff our agendas fit to burst. After all, we want people to feel like it's a worthwhile use of time, it's valuable. But if we want to promote participation, the key is to leave space for it. I often recommend clients cut their agendas back by 30 up to 50%. What's the worst case? You got finish early, and heck, who doesn't love getting time back or going for drinks early? Inclusively, of course. So tip 6 is really about allowing flex in your agenda. That said, just because you've got flex, just because we want everyone to feel part of it, feel heard, it doesn't mean that it's just necessarily an open forum for everything to happen. A familiar pitfall that many events fall into, number 7, is getting sidetracked. If you've clearly defined your purpose, then are the activities, the discussions actually aligned with that? So think about that both before the date, but also in planning the agenda too. As hosts, it's our role to keep an event on track, to park the things that could be held until another time. So the tip 7 there is to stay focused on your objectives. That doesn't mean that you have to shut people down entirely, but instead maybe think about creating a parking lot of ideas, thoughts, of discussion points that might be falling off topic, but that group can then come back to at a later date. If a group is clear and aligned on the objective of the day, as they hopefully should be, then it can be fairly easy to do. Now, pitfall 8 is a particularly personally relevant one for me because it's probably going to cost me some business, but I actually think that's a good thing. One of the key things that made me focus on offsites and why I became obsessed with helping leaders make the most of them was because the moments that a team come together are vital. And over I was being invited by leaders to facilitate training or speak at their events. They say, oh, Chloe, can you come and do an impact and influence training? Or can you come, my team needs some help on negotiations, can you do something around that? Or they might just say, hey, I've got this team thing coming up, a day with my team, I haven't had a chance to think about it, do you reckon you can come in and do a session for them? And of course, I'd say yes. And I'd come in and do something. And it wasn't that these sessions were bad, heck, they got stellar reviews. But time and time again, I left them thinking, I know you asked for this training, but was that really the best use of time? Was that really how I could have best supported your team? Pitfall 8 I've called the training trap. What I've noticed is that leaders fall into this trap because training feels a bit safe. Sometimes because it's easier to defend a negotiation training versus an opportunity to help a team get to know each other on a much deeper level. See, a fear of fluff has many leaders filling their agenda with trainings. And there is 100% a role for learning. Oh, I love to learn. But sometimes our team events actually are not the time and place for that. So tip 8 invites you to think about how you might swap training for an experience that actually does something a little bit different, like fostering trust and connection. So if you've read this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, you'll know that trust is the foundation of a high-performing team. It's far from fluffy. So much so that in a Google study where thousands of individuals within the teams were examined to really understand what distinguished a high-performing team from not high-performing ones. The finding was that the number one factor that influenced the performance of a team was something called psychological safety. That's essentially how safe we feel with each other to make mistakes, to ask for help, how much we trust each other. See, trust is vital. If the objective of our events is to help our teams connect on a deeper level, then just learning the components of something like trust is not going to be enough to actually help us achieve it. I absolutely love running trust trainings, I really do. But if you want to build trust in a team, there's better activities to help you achieve it. Okay, we're in the home stretch team. 2 more tips to go, and these 2 relate to the 3rd and final pillar of what I call the ultimate offsite, which is momentum. So tip 9 is to create space to integrate and allocate. What we're avoiding here is pitfall 9, which is a lack of accountability, and that's present at most events. You have this transformative day, the team might have come up with some brilliant ideas, perhaps you've even built an action plan, there's this intent to do something different, and the team are re-energized, they're motivated to drive change, they feel clear that this needs to be done, but by who? So tip 9 invites you to, within your event, or as quickly as possible after it, to allocate time to translate what I call insight into action. My recommendation from supporting hundreds of leaders is that this starts at your event, that you actually create space within your event to define the so what's, the key takeaways, the next steps, whilst the energy is high. Or at very least, diarised a date to do all of that right after the event. And here's a tip, leaders. These action plans don't and shouldn't just rest solely on your shoulders, okay? By doing that, by allocating who's going to do that, do what, when, etc., it supports you to do the final thing, which is to follow through. I told you right at the start I was going to leave the best for last. Well, a failure to follow through is probably the biggest pitfall of a team event. When I surveyed hundreds of leaders and I asked leaders with more than 10 years experience to tell me what was the biggest challenge that they saw come through in terms of team events, this was the one. A failure to follow through was the number one thing that they called out. 2/3 of them, in fact, called it out as the biggest challenge. So tip 10 is to follow through, or as I like to think of it, to fortune from the follow through. The fortune lies in what happens after the event, not necessarily within it itself. You've invested so much time, money, hours, prep, the opportunity costs that your team have spent from taking time away from their to-do list, their work. So don't let your event peter off at the last minute. This is where you can literally 10x the ROI of your event. It's by doing something differently as a result of coming together. I know it's super tempting to kind of dust our hands off and go straight back into work and think, oh, phew, it's done. But this is where the real magic happens. That's the 10. My question to you is, which one of the 10 felt most familiar? Which pitfall have you yourself fallen into? Let me know in the comments. See, offsites are the fastest way to transform a team, and it's the effective ones that have a clear purpose, effective engagement, and they actually sustain the momentum long after everyone has headed home. So apply the 10 tips and watch as your team offsites become not just another thing to tick off your to-do list, but actually a secret weapon, something that gives you what I call the offsite advantage. Sometimes we can't actually see the pitfalls that we're falling into clearly, nor can we recognise the area of strength. So to help, we've built this really quick 2-minute assessment to help you identify exactly which areas that you need to focus on to make your next offsite a flying, roaring success. It literally takes 2 minutes. We'll then send you a personalised report and resources that are related to your kind of weaker areas. So if you're keen to do that, the link is going to be below. And I hope that you've got something from today. If you have, please like, subscribe, comment. It makes such a difference, I can't even tell you. I'm on a mission to help you elevate your leadership by seizing the moments and bring your team together. So go forth and conquer, and I'll see you next time.